Welcome to Tales by Felix, where every story unlocks a new world. Remember to subscribe, like and share. Let's begin. The sun hung low over the kingdom of Ilé-Ọba, casting a golden glow across the sprawling palace, its mud-brick walls adorned with intricate carvings of elephants and baobab trees. The air was thick with the scent of blooming hibiscus and the distant rhythm of talking drums, signaling a royal departure. Olori Amara stood at the palace gates, her regal frame draped in a flowing wrapper of deep indigo, embroidered with silver threads that shimmered like stars. In her hands, she clutched a small, carved wooden elephant, its polished surface warm from her touch. It was a talisman of love, a gift from her husband, Oba Adewale, given during their courtship under a moonlit sky. Her dark eyes, usually bright with wisdom, shimmered with unshed tears as she watched Adewale mount his horse. The king was resplendent in his royal agbada, the fabric a rich crimson that billowed in the breeze. His face, handsome and strong, bore the weight of duty, or so it seemed. "My love," he said, his voice smooth as river stones, "I must go to my mother. Her health fails, and I cannot delay." Amara's lips curved into a proud, bittersweet smile. "Go, my king," she replied, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. "Bring her my love, and return to me swiftly." She stepped forward, pressing the wooden elephant into his palm. "Take this, Adewale. Let it remind you of home." He took it, his fingers brushing hers, but his grip on the reins tightened, a subtle tremor betraying him. Amara noticed but said nothing, her heart too full of trust to question the man she loved. The palace courtyard buzzed with attendants and guards, their murmurs blending with the clatter of hooves as Adewale's retinue prepared to depart. The crowd parted, and the king rode out, his silhouette framed against the blazing horizon. As the dust settled, Amara lingered at the gates, her fingers tracing the empty space where the elephant had been. The drums faded, and a strange stillness settled over her. She turned to re-enter the palace, but a glint caught her eye, a small, vibrant red feather, caught in the folds of Adewale's abandoned saddle blanket. She picked it up, her brow furrowing. It was unlike any feather from Ilé-Ọba's lands, its hue too vivid, its texture too foreign. A chill ran through her, though the sun still blazed. Where was her husband truly going? The whispering forest loomed like a living shadow, its ancient trees gnarled and twisted, their leaves whispering secrets in a language older than the kingdom itself. Oba Adewale and his retinue rode through its heart, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and something sharper, magic. The forest was no ordinary place, it was a realm of forgotten spirits, where the veil between worlds grew thin. Adewale's horse snorted nervously, sensing the unseen eyes watching from the canopy. At a clearing where a hidden waterfall cascaded into a crystal pool, Adewale dismounted. His men set up camp, their faces tense, but he seemed undeterred, his eyes alight with a fervor that hadn't been there in Ilé-Ọba. From the shadows emerged Zara, a woman whose beauty was as dangerous as a leopard's grace. Her skin gleamed like polished ebony, her eyes sharp as obsidian, and her wrapper, woven with threads of gold and crimson, seemed to pulse with an otherworldly light. She was no mere woman but an enchantress from the rival tribe of Oloran, known for their mastery of ancient magic. "My king," Zara purred, her voice a melody that seemed to weave itself into the air. "You've come, as you promised." She stepped closer, her fingers brushing his arm, and Adewale's breath hitched. In her presence, the world felt sharper, more alive. "I had no choice," he murmured, though his voice lacked conviction. You've changed something in me, Zara." She smiled, a predator's smile, and handed him a small vial filled with a shimmering liquid. "Drink this," she said. "It will bind your heart to mine, and together, we will wield power no kingdom can rival." Adewale hesitated, his fingers tightening around the wooden elephant in his pocket. Amara's face flashed in his mind, but Zara's gaze held him captive. He drank, and the world tilted, colors bleeding into one another. Zara led him to the waterfall, where torches flickered, casting eerie shadows. "Tonight," she whispered, "we perform the sacred ceremony. The spirits of the forest will bless our union." As they stood by the water, the trees seemed to lean closer, their whispers growing louder, almost accusing. Adewale's heart pounded, torn between enchantment and guilt. Zara's hand tightened on his, and the spirits of the whispering forest watched, their presence a silent warning. Years ago, under the sprawling branches of an Irako tree, A young Adewale had knelt before Amara, his eyes bright with love. "I swear by the gods," he had said, his voice trembling with sincerity, "I will never betray you. My heart is yours, forever." She had laughed, her joy like sunlight, and pressed a carved wooden elephant into his hands. "Then keep this," she'd said, "and let it be our bond." Now, in the whispering forest, that promise lay shattered. Adewale stood beside Zara, the vial's potion coursing through him, dulling his memories of Amara. Yet, in quiet moments, her face haunted him, her laughter, her strength, her trust. He clutched the elephant, its edges digging into his palm, a tether to a life he was betraying. Back in Ilé-Ọba, Amara walked through the bustling market, her royal guards trailing discreetly. The air was alive with the chatter of traders and the scent of roasted yam. She paused at a stall, her fingers brushing over a bolt of Kent cloth, when an old woman approached, her face weathered like ancient bark. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, fixed on Amara. "My queen," the woman rasped, her voice barely above a whisper. "The one you love is not where he claims to be." Amara's heart stilled. "What do you mean, old mother?" The seer pressed a small, black stone into Amara's hand, its surface cool and unnaturally smooth. "The whispering forest holds a secret," she said. "Trust your heart, but open your eyes. Betrayal wears a beautiful mask." Amara's grip tightened on the stone, her mind racing. "Who are you?" she asked, but the woman was already retreating into the crowd, her shawl blending with the market's chaos. Amara stood frozen, the black stone heavy in her hand, her trust in Adewale cracking like parched earth. The whispering forest glowed under a blood-red moon, its light filtering through the canopy to illuminate a sacred clearing. Zara stood at its center, a vision in a wrapper of vibrant yellows and oranges, like the sun itself. Her headdress, adorned with cowrie shells and feathers, shimmered with enchantments. The ceremony was no mere wedding, it was a ritual to bind Adewale to her tribe, a political maneuver cloaked in magic. Adewale stood beside her, his crimson agbada now adorned with Oloran symbols, a betrayal woven into the fabric. The officiant, an elder with eyes like burning coals, chanted in a tongue older than the forest itself. Adewale's mind swam, Amara's voice echoing faintly on the wind. "My love," she seemed to whisper, her face flickering in the pool's reflection. He blinked, and Zara's hand tightened on his, her magic drowning out the memory. "Do you, Adewale, pledge your heart and crown to me?" Zara asked, her voice a siren's call. I do," he stammered, the words heavy with enchantment. The elder raised a staff, and the forest trembled, as if the spirits themselves bore witness. From the shadows, a figure watched, Femi, Amara's loyal handmaiden. Her heart pounded as she crouched behind a gnarled tree, her breath shallow. She had followed Adewale on Amara's orders, sensing his unease before he left. Now, witnessing the ceremony, her loyalty to her queen burned brighter than ever. She clutched a torn piece of Zara's wrapper, ripped in her stealthy approach, and fled into the night, the forest's whispers chasing her. Femi ran through the whispering forest, her bare feet pounding against the earth, her breath ragged. The trees seemed to close in, their branches clawing at her wrapper. Zara's guards, shadowy figures cloaked in enchanted mist, pursued her, their footsteps eerily silent. Femi clutched the torn fabric, its golden threads glinting in the moonlight, a beacon of truth she had to deliver to Amara. A low growl stopped her in her tracks. A leopard, its eyes glowing with unnatural light, stepped onto the path. "You cannot run from Zara's will," it hissed, its voice a distortion of magic. Femi's heart raced, but she remembered her grandmother's tales of outwitting spirits. She tossed a handful of dirt into the air, chanting a childhood prayer. The leopard snarled but faltered, its form flickering as the magic wavered. Femi pressed on, navigating treacherous ravines and dodging vines that seemed to writhe with intent. At dawn, she stumbled upon a river, its waters swift and unforgiving. She hesitated, but the sound of pursuit spurred her forward. She plunged in, the current tugging at her, but her determination was stronger. On the far bank, she collapsed, soaked and trembling, the fabric still clutched in her hand. As the sun rose, Femi reached the palace gates, her body battered, her spirit unbroken. The guards gasped at her state, but she pushed past them, her voice hoarse. "I must see the queen," she cried. In Amara's chambers, Femi fell to her knees, presenting the torn fabric. "My queen," she gasped, "The king, he has betrayed you. He has married another in the whispering forest." Amara's face hardened, her eyes blazing with a fury that could rival the sun. She took the fabric, her fingers trembling, and the carved elephant she held shattered in her grip, its pieces scattering like her broken trust. The royal palace of Ilé-Ọba was a fortress of silence, its grand halls heavy with the weight of betrayal. Olori Amara stood in her private chambers, the torn piece of Zara's golden wedding garment clutched in her hand. The fabric shimmered with an unnatural sheen, as if mocking her with its beauty. Before her knelt Femi, her loyal handmaiden, her face streaked with dirt and exhaustion from her perilous journey through the whispering forest. The shattered remains of the carved wooden elephant lay scattered across the floor, its fragments glinting in the torchlight like broken promises. Amara's chest heaved, not with sorrow, but with a righteous fury that burned hotter than the midday sun. Her eyes, dark and fierce, fixed on Femi. "Speak, Femi," she commanded, her voice steady but laced with steel. "Tell me everything." Femi's voice trembled as she recounted the hidden ceremony, Adewale's vows to Zara, and the enchantress's cunning magic. "He is not himself, my queen," she said, her hands clasped tightly. "Zara's potions cloud his mind, but his heart, it still fights for you. I saw it in his eyes, even as he stood by her side." Amara's lips tightened into a thin line. She turned to the window, gazing out at the kingdom she had sworn to protect. The market square bustled below, unaware of the storm brewing in their queen's heart. "This is not just a betrayal of me," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "It is a betrayal of Ilé-Ọba. Zara's tribe seeks to bind our king to their will, to weaken us from within." Femi rose, her eyes wide. "What will you do, my queen?" Amara's gaze fell to the black stone the market seer had given her, its surface cool and heavy in her palm. "I will fight," she said, her voice rising like a gathering storm. "Not with tears, but with wisdom and strength. Zara may have magic, but I have the heart of this kingdom." She moved swiftly, summoning her most trusted advisor, Kofi, a grizzled warrior with a mind as sharp as his spear. "Send a messenger to my brother, General Tund, in the northern lands," she instructed. "Tell him his sister needs his army. And rally the royal guard. We prepare for war, not just against Zara, but against the lies that threaten to tear us apart." As Kofi bowed and departed, Amara turned back to Femi, her eyes softening. "You have risked everything for me, Femi. Your courage will not be forgotten." Femi bowed her head, tears of loyalty brimming in her eyes. Amara standing alone, the black stone glowing faintly in her hand, as if whispering secrets of its own. Outside, the wind howled, carrying the distant rhythm of war drums. Oba Adewale returned to Ilé-Ọba under a sky bruised with clouds, his retinue weary from their journey through the whispering forest. His crimson agbada was dusty, his face etched with false sorrow as he dismounted in the palace courtyard. The carved elephant weighed heavily in his pocket, a reminder of the lie he carried. "My mother is frail," he told the gathered crowd, his voice practiced and mournful. "But she will recover, with the gods' grace." The people murmured their sympathy, but Amara watched from the balcony above, her expression unreadable. Her indigo wrapper flowed like a river, her crown glinting with resolve. She descended the stairs, her movements deliberate, and the crowd parted as she approached her husband. "Adewale," she said, her voice calm but cutting through the air like a blade. "You returned sooner than expected. Tell me, how fares your mother?" He met her gaze, his smile faltering. She is resting," he said, his fingers tightening on the reins. "I did what I could." Amara stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his. "Did you?" she asked, her tone soft but laced with accusation. From her sleeve, she produced the torn piece of Zara's wedding garment, its golden threads glinting in the sunlight. "Then explain this." The courtyard fell silent, the air thick with tension. Adewale's face paled, his mouth opening but no words coming forth. The crowd whispered, their eyes darting between their king and queen. Amara raised the fabric high, her voice ringing out. "This is no cloth of Ilé-Ọba. It comes from the whispering forest, where you swore vows to another." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Adewale's guards shifted uneasily, their loyalty wavering. "Amara, he began, but she cut him off. "Do not lie to me again," she said, her voice a whip. "You have been bewitched, Adewale, and your actions are treason against this kingdom." She turned to the royal court, now gathered at the edges of the courtyard. "I call for an inquiry," she declared. "Let the truth be laid bare before our people." The court erupted in chaos, voices shouting in defense of their king or in outrage at his betrayal. Adewale stood frozen, the weight of his deception crushing him, as Amara's eyes burned with a fire that promised justice. Dawn broke over Ilé-Ọba, but the city was far from peaceful. In the market square, a town crier stood atop a wooden platform, his voice booming as he revealed the truth. "Oba Adewale has taken a second wife, Zara of Oloran, in a secret ceremony. He has betrayed Olori Amara and our kingdom." The words struck like thunder, and the crowd erupted, some shouting in disbelief, others in fury. In the palace, Amara stood before the royal council, her presence commanding despite the turmoil. "The king's actions threaten our alliances, our unity," she said, her voice steady. "Zara's tribe seeks to control us through him. We must act swiftly." The council was divided. Elder Bizi, a staunch supporter of Adewale, slammed his staff on the floor. "This is slander," he roared. "The king would never betray us. This is the queen's jealousy speaking." Amara's eyes flashed. "Jealousy," she said, holding up the torn garment. "This is evidence, Bizi." And Femi, my handmaiden, saw the ceremony with her own eyes. Femi stepped forward, recounting her tale, her voice unwavering despite the council's scrutiny. Outside, the city fractured. In the market, vendors argued, some defending Adewale's honor, others demanding justice. A young woman, clutching a basket of yams, shouted, "If the queen speaks true, we must stand with her." A man nearby scoffed, "The king is bewitched? Lies to weaken his rule." As dusk fell, the sky darkened unnaturally, clouds swirling with an eerie green glow. A magical storm, conjured by Zara, swept over Ilé-Ọba, lightning cracking like a warning. The people cowered, whispering of the enchantress's power. Amara stood at the palace balcony, her wrapper billowing in the wind, the black stone pulsing in her hand. "Zara thinks she can intimidate us," she murmured to Femi. "She underestimates the strength of Ilé-Ọba." The storm raged through the night, but by morning, the sky cleared, revealing a chilling sight, a magical projection of Zara, towering over Ilé-Ọba like a goddess of vengeance. Her image shimmered, her golden wrapper glowing, her voice echoing across the city. "Olori Amara," she taunted, her smile sharp as a blade, "you cling to a throne built on sand. Face me in the whispering forest, where the spirits will judge us. A duel of magic and wits. Or watch your kingdom crumble." The people gasped, some clutching amulets, others whispering prayers. Amara stood in the palace courtyard, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. She was no sorceress, but she was a queen, forged in the fires of duty and love for her people. "I accept," she declared, her voice carrying over the crowd. "Not for my pride, but for Ilé-Ọba." Femi grabbed her arm, her eyes wide with fear. "My queen, Zara's magic is ancient, forbidden. You cannot face her alone." Amara smiled, a fierce glint in her eyes. "I am not alone, Femi. I have the wisdom of our ancestors and the strength of our people." She turned to the horizon, where the whispering forest loomed, its shadows beckoning. That evening, Amara sought out the village elders, ancient keepers of Ilé-Ọba's lore. In a hut lit by flickering oil lamps, Elder Yemi, a woman with eyes like polished obsidian, studied the black stone in Amara's hand. "This is a spirit stone," she said, her voice a low chant. "It holds the power to counter Zara's enchantments, but only if your heart is pure." Amara nodded, her fingers closing around the stone. "My heart is for my people," she said. "Teach me what I must know." The elders shared rituals and chants, ancient remedies to shield against dark magic. As Amara memorized their words, the stone glowed brighter, as if sensing her resolve. Outside, the wind whispered, carrying the promise of a battle that would shake the kingdom to its core. The whispering forest was a battlefield of shadows and light, its trees swaying as if alive with anticipation. Zara stood at the center of a clearing, her golden wrapper blazing like fire, her hands weaving spells that conjured monstrous illusions, serpents with eyes of flame, lions that roared with thunder. The air crackled with her power, the ground trembling beneath her feet. Amara faced her, her indigo wrapper a stark contrast to Zara's brilliance. She held no weapons, only the black stone, now pulsing with a soft blue light. The elder's chants echoed in her mind, guiding her movements. As Zara hurled a fireball of magical energy, Amara raised the stone, chanting a counterspell. The fireball dissolved into sparks, scattering like fireflies. Zara laughed, her voice a venomous melody. "You think your elder's tricks can match me, Queen? I am the forest's chosen." Amara's eyes narrowed. "You are a thief of power, Zara. You fight for yourself. I fight for my people." She stepped forward, her voice rising with each chant, the stone amplifying her words. The illusions faltered, their forms wavering as Amara's resolve grew stronger. The duel was more than magic, it was a clash of ideologies. Zara's selfish ambition clashed with Amara's devotion to tradition and unity. The forest itself seemed to watch, its whispers growing louder, as if choosing a side. Zara conjured a wave of dark energy, but Amara countered with a shield of light, the stone blazing in her hand. As the battle raged, hoofbeats thundered in the distance. General Tund, Amara's brother, arrived with his army, their spears glinting in the moonlight. They surrounded the forest, ready to strike. But Zara, sensing the threat, raised her hands, and the trees came alive, their branches twisting into gnarled guardians that blocked the army's path. Adewale, still under her spell, stood at her side, his eyes vacant but his sword drawn. Amara's heart ached at the sight of her husband, but her resolve held firm. "This ends now, Zara," she said, her voice a promise. The stone glowed brighter, and the forest trembled, as if the spirits themselves awaited the outcome. The whispering forest was no longer a mere backdrop, it was alive, its trees twisting into grotesque forms, their branches snapping like the jaws of beasts. The air thrummed with Zara's dark magic, her golden wrapper glowing as she stood at the heart of the clearing, her laughter echoing like a storm. Oba Adewale, still bound by her enchantments, fought at her side, his eyes vacant but his sword flashing with deadly precision. General Tund's army, their spears raised, faltered at the forest's edge, blocked by the sentient trees that lashed out with thorny vines. Olori Amara stood resolute, the black spirit stone pulsing in her hand, its blue glow a beacon of hope against the darkness. She had faced Zara's illusions and fireballs, countering them with the elder's ancient chants, but this new threat, the forest itself, tested her resolve. "The source of her power lies deeper within," she said to Femi, who stood by her side, her face set with determination. "We must find it." Elder Yemi's words echoed in Amara's mind, the totem holds Zara's strength. Destroy it, and her magic crumbles. Amara turned to Femi and a small band of loyal soldiers, their faces grim but unwavering. "You must go where I cannot," she told them. "Find the totem. End this." Femi nodded, gripping her dagger. "For Ilé-Ọba," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. She led the soldiers into the forest, slipping past the thrashing trees, their movements swift and silent. Amara faced Zara alone, chanting to keep the enchantress's focus on her. "Your power is stolen, Zara," she taunted, her voice cutting through the din. "The spirits of this forest will not serve you forever." Zara's eyes flashed with fury. "You know nothing of power, Queen," she spat, raising her hands. The trees roared, their branches closing in, but Amara's stone glowed brighter, shielding her from their grasp. In the distance, Femi's team vanished into the shadows, their mission a desperate gamble to save their king and kingdom. The palace of Ilé-Ọba stood somber, its halls echoing with the whispers of betrayal. News of Adewale's actions had reached his mother, Aya Agba, a formidable matriarch whose presence commanded respect across the kingdom. She was not the frail woman Adewale had claimed to visit. She was a pillar of strength, her eyes sharp with wisdom and grief as she entered the palace, her staff tapping against the stone floor. Amara greeted her with a bow, her heart heavy. "Aya Agba," she said, "your son has been ensnared by Zara's magic. I fight to save him, but the kingdom suffers." Aya Agba's face was a mask of sorrow, her wrinkles deepening as she spoke. "My son was a man of honor once," she said, her voice low and trembling. "I must see him." In the whispering forest, Aya Agba confronted Adewale, who stood beside Zara, his sword dripping with the blood of Tun's soldiers. The sight of her son, his eyes clouded by enchantment, broke her heart. She stepped forward, unafraid of Zara's magic, her presence like a storm held at bay. "Adewale," she said, her voice soft but piercing. "Do you not know me?" Your mother, who sang you to sleep under the stars." She began to sing, an ancestral lullaby, its melody weaving through the forest's chaos. The notes were simple yet powerful, carrying memories of Adewale's childhood, of nights by the fire, of promises made to his people. Adewale faltered, his sword lowering. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, but Zara's hand clamped onto his arm, her magic surging. "He is mine," she hissed, but Aya Agba's song grew louder, its rhythm battling the enchantress's spell. The forest seemed to pause, the trees' movement slowing, as if the spirits themselves listened. "You have caused pain, my son," Aya Agba said, tears streaming down her face. "But you can still return to us." The lullaby reached a crescendo, and Adewale's eyes cleared for a moment, a spark of his true self breaking through. Deep within the whispering forest, Femi and her small band of soldiers crept through the undergrowth, their breaths shallow as they evaded the living trees. Guided by instinct and fragments of Elder Yemi's lore, they reached a hidden grove where a massive tree stood, its bark glowing with an eerie green light. The whispering tree, the totem of Zara's power, pulsed with energy, its branches heavy with the trapped voices of those she had enchanted. Their whispers filled the air, a cacophony of despair and longing. Femi's heart pounded as she approached, her dagger trembling in her hand. "This is it," she whispered to her companions. "The source of her magic." One of the soldiers, a young man named Kweku, hesitated. "The voices, they're so loud," he said, his eyes wide with fear. "What if we can't destroy it?" Femi's jaw tightened. She remembered a ritual from her childhood, taught by her grandmother, a cleansing chant to banish dark magic. "We have to try," she said. She began to chant, her voice soft but steady, the words flowing like a river. The tree shuddered, its glow flickering, but the voices grew louder, as if resisting. Before they could complete the ritual, the ground shook, and Zara's monstrous guardians emerged, hulking creatures of twisted bark and thorn, their eyes burning with malice. "You dare touch my power?" Zara's voice boomed through the forest, her projection appearing above the tree. Femi's team drew their weapons, but the guardians were relentless, their branches slashing like whips. Femi stood her ground, clutching the dagger. "Keep chanting," she shouted to Kweku, dodging a thorned vine. "We're close." The tree's glow dimmed, the voices weakening, but the guardians closed in, their roars drowning out the chant. In the heart of the forest, Adewale swayed, caught between his mother's lullaby and Zara's tightening grip. Aya Agba's song wove memories of love and duty into his mind, each note chipping away at the enchantress's spell. His hand trembled on his sword, his eyes flickering with clarity. "Amara," he whispered, her name a lifeline. Zara's face twisted with rage. "You will not defy me," she snarled, her hands weaving a spell to tighten her hold. But at that moment, a tremor shook the forest. The whispering tree, miles away, was weakening under Femi's ritual. In the hidden grove, Femi's voice rose above the chaos, her chant reaching its climax. The guardians lunged, but Kweku and the others fought back, their spears striking true. The tree's glow faltered, and the trapped voices surged, a chorus of defiance. Adewale, feeling the shift, staggered, his mind clearing like a fog lifting. With a cry of anguish, he broke free from Zara's grasp, his eyes blazing with realization. "What have I done?" he roared, memories of his betrayal flooding back, Amara's trust, the kingdom's faith, his own honor shattered. He turned on Zara, but she was focused on the tree, her power waning. Femi, battered but unyielding, drove her dagger into the tree's heart, shouting the final words of the ritual. Adewale, as if guided by the spirits, grabbed a ceremonial dagger from his belt and sprinted toward the grove, guided by the fading whispers. He reached the tree just as Femi fell back, exhausted, and plunged the dagger into its core. The tree exploded in a burst of light, the trapped spirits soaring free, their voices fading into a gentle hum. Zara screamed, her magic unraveling, as the forest stilled, its guardians crumbling into lifeless wood. Adewale collapsed, his body racked with shame, the weight of his actions crushing him. The whispering forest was silent, its magic dissipated like morning mist. Zara stood in the clearing, her golden wrapper dull, her form flickering like a dying flame. The totem's destruction had stripped her of power, revealing her for what she was, a woman driven by ambition, not a goddess. Her eyes, once sharp with malice, were now wide with fear. Amara approached, the spirit stone still glowing faintly in her hand. "You thought you could steal my husband, my kingdom," she said, her voice calm but unyielding. "But you forgot the strength of Ilé-Ọba." Zara fell to her knees, her voice trembling. "I only wanted power," she whispered, "to rise above my tribe's shadow. You cannot understand." "I understand ambition," Amara replied. "But yours was built on lies." She turned to Tun's army, now free to enter the forest, and nodded. "Take her to the palace. She will face justice." Adewale lay slumped against a tree, his face ashen. He looked at Amara, his eyes filled with remorse. "My love," he said, his voice breaking. "I was weak. I let her poison my heart." Amara's expression softened, but her resolve held firm. "Your heart may heal, Adewale," she said, "but your actions have wounded a kingdom. You must answer for them." She turned away, leaving him in the care of Tun's soldiers, her heart torn between love and duty. As the army escorted Zara and Adewale back to Ilé-Ọba, the forest's whispers faded, replaced by the distant sound of drums. The kingdom awaited judgment, and Amara stood ready to lead, her strength a beacon in the gathering dusk. The great hall of Ilé-Ọba's palace was a cauldron of tension, its walls adorned with ancestral carvings that seemed to watch the proceedings with silent judgment. Oba Adewale stood before the royal court, no longer a king but a man stripped of his crown, his crimson agbada replaced by a simple tunic of ash gray. His head was bowed, his hands bound loosely before him, a symbol of his submission to the kingdom's will. The crowd, nobles, elders, and commoners alike, murmured, their voices a mix of anger, pity, and confusion. Olori Amara sat on the throne, her indigo wrapper regal yet heavy with the weight of her role. The black spirit stone lay in her lap, its glow faded but its presence a reminder of her victory over Zara's magic. Beside her stood Aya Agba, Adewale's mother, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, and Femi, her loyal handmaiden, whose courage had brought the truth to light. Amara rose, her voice cutting through the hall's clamor. "Oba Adewale, you have betrayed your queen, your kingdom, and your honor," she said, her tone steady but laced with pain. "You were ensnared by Zara's magic, but your choices led you to her. What say you?" Adewale lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers, raw with remorse. "I have no defense, my queen," he said, his voice hoarse. "I was weak, swayed by promises of power and a heart clouded by enchantment. I have wounded you, my love, and our people. I accept any punishment you deem just." The crowd stirred, some calling for exile, others for mercy. Elder Bizi, once Adewale's staunch defender, spoke up, his voice heavy. "He was bewitched, yes, but a king must be stronger than magic. Let him face the consequences." Amara's gaze swept the hall, taking in the divided faces. She stepped forward, her presence commanding silence. "A king's strength lies in his people," she said. "I will not take his life, for that would deepen our wounds. Instead, I ask you, the heart of Ilé-Ọba, what justice should be served?" The hall erupted in debate, voices clashing like swords. Amara listened, her heart torn between love and duty. Finally, she raised her hand, and the room fell silent. "Adewale, you will be stripped of your title," she declared. "For 1 year, you will live among the people as a servant, not a king. You will work their fields, build their homes, and hear their stories. Only through service can you earn their forgiveness, and mine." Adewale knelt, tears streaming down his face. "I accept my queen," he whispered. The crowd watched, some nodding in approval, others still uncertain, as Adewale was led away, his fate sealed by the woman he had betrayed. The sun beat down on the fields of Ilé-Ọba, where Adewale, no longer Oba, toiled alongside farmers, his hands blistered from wielding a hoe. His gray tunic was stained with sweat and earth, a far cry from the crimson robes of royalty. The carved elephant, once a symbol of his love for Amara, was gone, left behind in the forest. Yet its memory lingered, a silent spur to his redemption. The villagers were wary at first, their eyes hard with resentment. "You betrayed our queen," a farmer named Jide spat, tossing a clod of dirt at Adewale's feet. "Why should we trust you now?" Adewale met his gaze, his voice steady. "I don't ask for trust, Jide. I ask for a chance to make amends." He worked tirelessly, planting yams, repairing huts, and listening to the people's stories, of loss, hope, and resilience. Slowly, some softened, moved by his humility. A young girl, Amina, offered him a cup of water one day, her smile shy but genuine. "You're different now," she said. "Like my father was, before he left us." Her words pierced Adewale, reminding him of the pain he had caused. At night, alone in a modest hut, he wrestled with his guilt, praying to the ancestors for strength. "I was a king," he whispered to the darkness, "but I forgot what it meant to serve." Months passed, and Adewale's efforts began to shift the tide. Villagers shared meals with him, their laughter mingling with his. Yet some remained unforgiving, their scorn a constant reminder of his fall. As the year neared its end, Adewale made a decision. He would return to the Whispering Forest, not as a king or a servant, but as a man seeking to confront his past. Under a starlit sky, he set out alone, his heart heavy but resolute. The forest loomed ahead, its whispers no longer menacing but solemn, as if awaiting his return. The Whispering Forest was a place of quiet reverence now, its trees standing tall and still, their branches no longer twisted by Zara's magic. Adewale walked its paths, his footsteps soft against the earth, the air thick with the scent of moss and memory. He carried no weapons, only a small sack containing tools for a ritual he had learned from the village elders, a way to seek forgiveness from the spirits. He reached the clearing where he had married Zara, the waterfall now a gentle cascade, its waters sparkling under the moonlight. The ground was scarred from the battle, but new growth sprouted, a sign of healing. Adewale knelt, his eyes falling on a familiar object half buried in the soil, the carved wooden elephant, left behind by Tun's army. Its polished surface was weathered, but it gleamed with a quiet strength. "I was blind," he said aloud, his voice trembling. "I chased power and forgot love, forgot duty. I betrayed Amara, my people, and you, spirits of this forest." He dug a small hole at the base of a young sapling, placing the elephant within. "Let this be my promise, to be a man worthy of trust." As he covered the elephant with earth, the forest stirred, its whispers softening into a gentle rustle, like a sigh of forgiveness. A breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers, and Adewale felt a weight lift from his soul. He rose, his heart lighter, and realized that true power lay not in crowns or magic, but in honesty and service. He turned to leave, but a faint glow caught his eye, the spirit stone, discarded during the battle, now resting among the roots of the sapling. It pulsed once, as if acknowledging his change, then dimmed. Adewale smiled, knowing the forest had spoken. A year had passed since Adewale's exile began, and Ilé-Ọba buzzed with anticipation as he approached the palace gates. His grey tunic was worn but clean, his face weathered but resolute. The crowd gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and hope. Amara stood at the throne, her indigo wrapper now adorned with gold, a symbol of her unchallenged leadership. She had grown stronger, wiser, her rule marked by prosperity and unity. Yet her heart remained a battlefield, torn between love and the scars of betrayal. Adewale entered the great hall, his steps measured, his eyes fixed on Amara. The crowd fell silent, the air thick with expectation. He knelt before her, not as a king, but as a man humbled by his journey. "My queen," he said, his voice steady but soft, "I have served our people, listened to their pain, and faced my own. I do not ask for my crown, only for a chance to stand by your side, to serve Ilé-Ọba as you do." Amara's eyes searched his, seeking the man she had once loved. She saw sincerity, but also the shadow of his betrayal. "You have changed, Adewale," she said, her voice calm but piercing. "But trust, once broken, is not easily rebuilt. Why should I believe your heart is true?" The crowd held its breath. Adewale rose, pulling a small sapling from his sack, its roots wrapped in cloth. "This grew where I buried our elephant," he said. "It is a new beginning, as I hope to be. I will spend my life proving my love, not with words, but with deeds." Amara's hand trembled, the spirit stone in her pocket warm against her skin. She stepped closer, her eyes locked on his, searching for truth. The hall was silent, the weight of her decision hanging in the air. The great hall of Ilé-Ọba was bathed in morning light, its carvings glowing as if the ancestors themselves bore witness. Amara stood before Adewale, her heart a storm of love, pain, and hope. She looked into his eyes, seeing not the king who had betrayed her, but the man who had toiled, humbled himself, and returned changed. She extended her hand, her fingers brushing his, and pulled him to his feet. "Adewale," she said, her voice resonating with strength and love, "you have walked the path of redemption. You have served our people, not as a king, but as one of them. I see your heart, and I choose to believe in it." The crowd gasped, then cheered, their voices rising like a tide. Amara turned to them, her presence commanding. "Ilé-Ọba will not be ruled by one alone," she declared. "Adewale will return, not to command, but to serve beside me. Together, we will rebuild what was broken." Adewale's eyes glistened, his hand tightening around hers. "I will never fail you again," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The final scene unfolded in the palace courtyard, where Amara and Adewale walked hand in hand, the sapling planted at the center, its leaves catching the sunlight. The kingdom gathered, their drums beating a rhythm of renewal. A voiceover, rich and resonant, spoke over the scene. "A lie can build a kingdom of sand, but the truth, and a heart that seeks forgiveness, can build a palace that lasts forever." The end.